Jack was a human mechanic who lived on the far edge of a space colony. His workshop stood close to the junkyard where broken ships, rusted machines, and piles of scrap metal were thrown away. Every day he worked alone, fixing engines, welding parts, and repairing ships for those who could not afford the expensive service in the main city. He liked quiet work, and he liked the sound of machines more than the noise of people. But one cold night everything changed. The air smelled of burnt wires and old oil. Jack was closing his shop when he heard a sound. It was faint at first, like a weak cry. At first he thought it was just the wind blowing through the broken hulls in the junkyard. But then it came again, softer, more desperate. The sound made his chest tighten. It was not a machine sound. It was alive. Curious, Jack picked up his lantern and walked into the maze of scrap. The piles of metal looked like dark mountains under the colony's artificial sky. He climbed over twisted pipes and old ship wings, following the strange cry. His boots crunched against shards of glass, and the air grew colder. The sound grew clearer. It was like a child's cry, but sharper, broken, full of pain. Finally, Jack reached a pile of wreckage that looked like it had collapsed only recently. He pushed aside a rusted panel, then another. His hands grew black with oil and dust. Suddenly, he froze beneath the metal. Glowing faintly in the shadows were scales, white scales that shimmered like moonlight. He pulled away more wreckage, and there it was. A small creature curled in fear. It was a dragon hatchling, but not like the stories he had heard. Its skin was pale, almost glowing, with eyes like molten silver. Its wings were folded, trembling, and one leg was bleeding badly. Jack's breath caught in his throat. Dragons were rare, powerful, and dangerous, and this one was an albino, a kind many believed to be sacred or cursed. He had heard rumors that the alien empire paid mountains of credits for a single dragon. Egg and armies hunted them. The hatchling whimpered, its voice weak. Its silver eyes met Jack's, and something stirred inside him. He could see fear but also trust. Jack hesitated. He knew the right thing, the safe thing, was to walk away and pretend he never found it. If the colony guards discovered him hiding such a creature, he would be executed. But Jack had never turned, his back on something broken. Not a machine, not a person, not even a strange creature like this. Slowly he reached out his hand. The hatchling flinched, then sniffed his dirty fingers with its small nose. A spark passed between them. Jack felt his heart beat faster. He carefully lifted the little creature into his arms. It was lighter than he expected, its body warm but weak. He wrapped it inside his jacket and hurried back to the workshop. Inside, the hatchling looked around with wide eyes. Jack placed it gently on an old blanket. He searched his shelves for anything useful. Bandages, a bottle of antiseptic, some scraps of food. He cleaned the wound on its leg, and the hatchling hissed but did not bite. Then he fed it a small piece of dried meat. To his surprise, it ate hungrily, licking his hand afterward. Hours passed, and the strange bond grew stronger. The hatchling followed him with its eyes, chirping softly whenever he moved away. When he sat down, it crawled closer, curling against his boot as if it had chosen him. Jack stared at it in silence, wondering what fate had brought it to him. He thought about the bounty hunters, the soldiers, and the empire that would come looking for it. He thought about the danger, about how his life would never be the same. That night, as he locked the workshop doors, the cry of the hatchling echoed in his mind. It was no longer a sound of pain, but a sound of trust. Jack lay awake on his cot, the glow of the albino dragon lighting the shadows of the workshop. He knew he had made a choice. He had taken in something rare, something the galaxy would kill for, and deep inside he felt it. His quiet life as a simple mechanic had ended. Something far greater had just begun. Jack woke up early the next day. His eyes were heavy from little sleep, but the moment he looked toward the corner of his workshop, he forgot his tiredness. The small albino dragon hatchling was curled up on the blanket, breathing softly. Its scales glowed faintly, shining white even in the dim light of the workshop. Jack had fixed many broken machines, but he had never felt the kind of responsibility he felt now. He was no longer caring for a thing. He was caring for a life. He quietly moved around the workshop, fixing the morning fire and preparing a small meal. The hatchling woke when it smelled food. It tilted its silver eyes toward him and gave a soft chirp. Jack could not help but smile. He tore a piece of dried meat and offered it in his palm. The dragon sniffed it before snapping it up quickly. Its tiny wings fluttered as if in happiness. Jack shook his head. He never imagined he would be feeding a dragon inside his workshop. As the day went on, Jack cleaned the dragon's wound again and wrapped it with fresh cloth. The creature did not fight him. Instead, it rested its head against his arm. The bond between them grew stronger, but Jack knew this bond was dangerous. The albino hatchling was rare, far too rare. He had heard stories whispered in the colony. Taverns, rumors said an albino dragon egg had been stolen from the Empire itself. The soldiers were hunting for it, and the reward for information was enough to buy an entire starship. Jack paced back and forth, thinking, if anyone discovered the hatchling, his workshop would be burned. He would be dragged out and executed in front of the colony. He glanced at the dragon, so small and helpless. It did not know the danger it carried. It only knew that Jack had saved it. He sighed deeply. There was no turning back. He had already chosen. That evening, Jack went to buy more supplies. He walked through the market with his hood up. His hands shook as he traded credits for extra food and medicine. He could feel eyes on him. The colony was buzzing with talk. Posters had been pinned to walls, showing the picture of a dragon egg. The words written below were clear. Reward for information. Report immediately. Jack kept his face hidden and hurried back to his workshop. When he entered, the hatchling rushed toward him, hopping awkwardly on its small legs. Its silver eyes glowed in the dim light. Jack dropped to his knees and stroked its head. He whispered softly, "Quiet, little one. They must not hear you." The hatchling gave a soft hum and settled against him, but Jack's heart pounded. The colony guards were already moving from house to house, searching. Hours later, Jack heard heavy boots outside. Voices shouted, dogs barked. The guards were close. His hands trembled as he dimmed the workshop lights. The hatchling sensed danger and pressed close to him. Its small body was warm but shaking. Jack whispered again, "Stay quiet, please." He tucked it under the workbench, covering it with a piece of cloth. There was a loud knock at the door. Jack swallowed hard and opened it. 2 colony guards stood there, their armor dirty from searching. One held a scanner, the other held a weapon. "We're looking for something," the guard said. "Something rare. Have you seen or heard anything unusual in the junkyard?" Jack forced a calm smile and shook his head. "Just broken machines, same as always." The guard stepped inside, scanning the room. Jack's palms were sweaty. His heart beat so loudly he thought they would hear it. The hatchling gave a faint chirp under the cloth. Jack coughed loudly, banging a wrench against the table to cover the sound. The guard glanced at him suspiciously, but the scanner showed nothing. After a few long moments, they turned and left, warning him to report anything strange. When the door closed, Jack leaned against it, gasping for breath. He pulled the cloth aside and lifted the hatchling into his arms. "You nearly got us both killed," he whispered. But the hatchling only nuzzled against his chest. Its small body trembling but trusting, Jack sat on the floor, holding it close. He knew now that the colony would not be safe for long. Word was spreading too quickly. Hunters would come, soldiers would not stop. That night, as Jack sat in the dark workshop, he realized the truth. This was not just a secret. It was a storm waiting to break. The little creature had bonded with him, and that bond could not be undone. He stared at the hatchling's glowing scales and whispered, "What are you, little one? Why did fate bring you to me?" The dragon only gave a soft hum, closing its eyes against his chest. Jack closed his own eyes too, but his thoughts did not rest. He had chosen to protect the hatchling, and now he would have to face the danger that came with it. Outside, the colony was full of whispers. Inside, in the small workshop, a bond was growing stronger, a bond that would soon change the future of both man and dragon. The next days in the colony grew tense. Jack kept the albino hatchling hidden, inside his workshop, but he could feel the pressure building. Soldiers patrolled more often and bounty hunters from other worlds began to appear in the streets. They carried strange weapons and cruel eyes, looking at every shadow like it might hide treasure. Rumors spread like fire. Some said the albino dragon had already been taken off-world. Others swore it was hiding in the colony itself. Jack knew it was only a matter of time before someone knocked on his door again. The hatchling grew stronger each day. Its wound healed slowly and its small wings began to stretch. Sometimes it tried to flap and hop, bumping into tools and boxes. Jack had to laugh softly despite his fear, but each sound from the creature made his stomach tighten. If anyone heard it, there would be no hiding anymore. At night, the hatchling curled against him, its glow faint but warm. Jack often lay awake, staring at the roof of his workshop, wondering how long they could survive like this. Then the hunters came. It was late, evening, when Jack heard shouting outside. Not the usual colony guards, but rougher voices. He peered through a crack in the shutters. A group of tall aliens had arrived. Their armor was painted with the mark of the Empire, and their weapons looked sharp and deadly. They walked with confidence, pushing aside anyone in their way. These were not soldiers of order, these were hunters, ruthless and paid to kill. They gathered in the colony square and spoke loudly so all could hear. One of them raised a device and projected a glowing image into the air. It was the albino hatchling, almost identical to the one Jack hid inside. The hunter's voice echoed, "This creature belongs to the Empire. Anyone who hides it will face death. Anyone who delivers it will be rewarded with riches beyond measure." The crowd gasped. Some looked afraid, others greedy. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The hatchling inside the workshop sensed the danger. It let out a faint cry. Jack rushed to silence it, holding it close, but the sound had already escaped. One of the hunters in the square turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. Slowly, he began walking toward the junkyard. His steps were heavy, his weapon humming with energy. Jack's heart raced. He grabbed a wrench in one hand, though he knew it would be useless against such power. Within minutes, the hunters stormed into the junkyard. Their boots crunched against the scrap. Their voices echoed as they spread out. Searching, one shouted, "I heard it here, the dragon is close." Jack quickly pushed the hatchling under a workbench, whispering, "Stay quiet no matter what." The little dragon trembled but obeyed, its glowing eyes peeking from the shadows. The workshop door burst open with a crash. Hunters entered, their weapons glowing. The leader sneered at Jack. "Human mechanic, you hide things in this trash heap, don't you?" Jack tried to act calm, wiping his hands on his dirty shirt. "Only machines, nothing alive here, you're wasting your time." The hunter stepped closer, scanning the room. His eyes landed on the broken ship parts, the shelves of tools, and then the workbench. Suddenly, the hatchling let out a sharp roar, not weak but powerful. The sound filled the workshop, vibrating through the walls. The hunters froze, their eyes wide. Dragons did not roar unless they sensed danger. The leader snarled, "It's here." He raised his weapon, ready to fire. Before Jack could think, the hatchling leapt from the shadows, its silver eyes blazing. It was small, but its roar carried the weight of something greater. White sparks flickered from its mouth, and for the first time, Jack saw its hidden power. A stream of pale fire burst out, striking the wall and showering the room with light. The hunters stumbled back, shielding their faces. Jack grabbed a metal rod and swung with all his strength, striking one hunter across the helmet. The man fell, groaning. Chaos erupted inside the workshop. The hatchling darted around, snapping and roaring. Jack fought desperately, dodging swings of alien weapons. Sparks and smoke filled the air. The hunters shouted angrily, cursing that a human dared stand against them. The leader growled, "The creature has bonded with him, impossible. It should never choose a human." His words were filled with rage and fear. Jack did not understand, but he knew one thing. This hatchling was more than just rare. It was something the Empire desperately wanted. That made him fight harder. The battle spilled into the junkyard. Metal scraps clanged under their boots. Jack swung his rod again and again, each strike fueled by desperation. The hatchling darted beside him, breathing short bursts of pale fire. The hunters fired their weapons, beams of light slicing through the night sky. Jack barely dodged, pulling the hatchling close. Neighbors peeked from their homes, eyes wide. Some whispered, others ran to hide. No one dared help. Jack was alone, but he did not back down. Finally, after a long struggle, the hunters pulled back. They glared at him, their leader's eyes burning with hate. "This isn't over, human. The Empire will take what is theirs." With that, they retreated into the shadows, leaving behind scorched metal and silence. Jack dropped to his knees, gasping. The hatchling crawled onto his shoulder, pressing its head against his cheek. Jack's arms trembled, but he held the little dragon tightly. Around them, the junkyard was a mess of smoke and broken metal. His workshop was half destroyed, but he was alive. The hatchling had chosen him, defended him, and together they had survived. That night, as the fires cooled, Jack knew one truth: the colony was no longer safe. The hunters would return stronger, and next time there would be no escape. He looked into the silver eyes of the hatchling and whispered, "We have to leave, little one. The stars are our only chance now." The night after the hunters attacked, Jack could not rest. His body ached from the fight, but his mind was sharper than ever. He knew the hunters would not stop. They would return with more men, more weapons, and maybe even warships. The colony would hand him over if it meant saving themselves. There was no time left. He had to leave. Jack spent the dark hours in his workshop, working faster than he had ever worked before. In the corner stood an old ship, broken and rusting. It had been abandoned years ago, traded to him for scraps. Most people thought it was useless, but Jack saw life in machines where others saw only junk. He tore off panels, welded cracks, and replaced broken wires. Sparks flew around him as he worked. The hatchling stayed close. Its silver eyes never left him. Sometimes it chirped softly. Sometimes it stretched its small wings. Jack gave it scraps of food, patting its head before diving back into work. "If this ship doesn't fly, we're dead," he muttered. Sweat rolled down his face. His hands bled from sharp metal, but he kept moving. Outside, the colony grew restless. Shouts and fires echoed in the distance. The hunters were searching house to house. Jack could hear the distant cries of people forced out of their homes. Every sound made his heart race. He worked faster, his tools clattering loudly. The hatchling tilted its head, almost sensing his fear. It let out a soft hum that strangely gave him strength. By dawn, the ship was ready, barely. Its hull was patched. Its engines growled when he tested them. Jack stared at it with tired eyes. He whispered, "Hold together, old girl, just one more flight." He packed a small bag with tools, food, and water. He wrapped the hatchling in a blanket and carried it close. It gave a soft roar as if it knew they were leaving. As the first light of the colony's artificial sun rose, soldiers and hunters marched into the junkyard. Jack heard them shouting orders. His blood ran cold. He rushed into the ship and strapped himself in. His fingers flew across the controls. The hatchling sat beside him, its wings trembling. The ship shook as the engines powered up. Then came the pounding on the hull. Hunters had reached the ship. They shouted, banging on the metal, "Open up, human mechanic, give us the dragon." Jack ignored them, pulling levers. The engines roared louder, flames spat from the back. The hunters stepped back in shock. One raised his weapon to fire, with a deafening roar. The ship lifted, metal scraps scattered in the blast. Jack gritted his teeth as the ship rose unsteady into the air. The hunters opened fire, beams of light striking the hull. Sparks flew, alarms screamed. Jack pushed the throttle forward. The ship jerked hard, but it climbed, leaving the junkyard. Behind, the colony below turned into a blur. Jack's heart pounded. He had done it, but the danger was not over. On the radar, small dots appeared. Enemy fighters. They were chasing him. Their ships were faster, sleeker, and armed with deadly cannons. Jack cursed under his breath. Of course they wouldn't let us go easy. The fighters closed in quickly. Blinding beams shot past his ship, shaking it. Jack gripped the controls tighter, dodging between asteroids at the edge of the colony's orbit. The hatchling screeched at the sight of the enemy ships, its small body trembling. Jack whispered, "Stay calm, little one. I'll get us out." 1. fighter locked onto them. A missile shot forward. Jack spun the ship sharply. The missile grazed past and exploded against an asteroid. Rocks shattered, flying in every direction. The old ship rattled, its alarms screaming again. Jack's hands moved fast, pulling levers and twisting knobs. He used every trick he knew, every repair skill he had. Then something unexpected happened. The hatchling climbed onto the dashboard. Its silver eyes glowed brightly. It opened its mouth and let out a roar so loud it shook the cabin. From its mouth came a blast of pale white. Fire! Not big, but bright enough to blind. The nearest fighter swerved violently, crashing into an asteroid. Jack's jaw dropped. He had seen dragons breathe fire in stories, but this was different. This was like a living star burning inside the small creature. The other fighters pulled back in shock. Jack took the chance. He slammed the throttle forward. The ship shot through the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks. Lasers flashed behind him, but none hit. The hatchling roared again, its small body glowing brighter. Jack shouted over the alarms, "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the radar cleared. The fighters gave up, returning to the colony. Jack leaned back in his seat, gasping for breath. His ship was badly damaged, panels flickering, smoke filling the cabin. But they were alive. He glanced at the hatchling, which curled against his chest, exhausted after its burst of fire. Jack stroked its scales gently, whispering, "You saved us, little one. We'll make it, I promise." As the stars stretched before him, Jack realized he had stepped into something far bigger than himself. He was no longer just a mechanic hiding in a junkyard. He was carrying a creature the galaxy would kill to claim, and now, out in the endless dark, with enemies behind and unknown dangers ahead, his true journey had begun. Jack's ship drifted through the stars, broken but still alive. The engines groaned, sparks flew from the control panel, and smoke curled. In the cabin, Jack coughed as he tried to keep the ship steady. His hands were blistered from holding the controls too tightly. The hatchling lay weakly beside him, its glowing scales dim from exhaustion. Jack whispered, "Hold on, little one, just a little longer." He did not know where he was going, only that he had to get far away from the colony and the hunters. Hours passed and Jack's eyes grew heavy. The ship's navigation system was half broken, showing only scattered stars and a rough path forward. But then something strange appeared. A faint signal blinked on the screen. It was old, hidden deep. Almost like someone did not want it to be found. Jack narrowed his eyes. "What's this?" He followed the signal, steering into a dark part of space where no trade routes existed. Soon, a hidden planet appeared, covered in mountains and mist. Its surface glowed faintly under twin moons. Jack felt a strange chill. He had heard rumors in the taverns about a secret world where dragons lived free, untouched by the Empire. Most thought it was only a legend. But here it was, right in front of him. As the ship descended, the hatchling suddenly stirred. It lifted its head and let out a low cry. Its silver eyes widened as if it recognized this place. Jack was surprised. "You know this world?" The hatchling gave a small hum and flapped its wings weakly. Jack felt a strange calm wash over him. Maybe fate had brought them here. The ship crash-landed in a valley, sliding across stone before finally stopping with a loud groan. Jack stumbled, out coughing. The hatchling leapt after him, its wings spread slightly as it sniffed the air. The valley was silent, but then a sound echoed across the cliffs, a deep, thunderous roar. Jack froze. He looked up and saw shadows moving against the moons, giant wings, glowing eyes, and long tails. Dozens of dragons circled above. They landed one by one, their claws shaking the ground. Flames flickered from their mouths as they stared at Jack. Their scales shimmered in colors of gold, green, and black. Each one was larger than a house. Jack's heart pounded. He had seen beasts before, but nothing like this. These were ancient, powerful, and intelligent. He knew if they decided to kill him, he would not survive. The hatchling gave a cry and ran toward them. The dragons roared in response, their voices booming like thunder. One stepped forward, massive and silver-scaled, its eyes sharp as blades. It lowered its head to the hatchling and sniffed. Then it turned its gaze to Jack. Smoke curled from its nostrils as it spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. "Human, why do you bring one of our kind here?" Jack froze. He had never spoken to a dragon before. His throat felt dry, but he managed to whisper, "I didn't steal it. I found it. It was dying in the junkyard. I saved it." The dragons growled, some snapping their jaws in anger. The silver one narrowed its eyes. "You expect us to believe a human saved an albino hatchling? Your kind has always hunted us." Jack took a step back, but the hatchling rushed to his side, pressing against his leg. It chirped softly and looked at the dragons, then at Jack. The silver dragon tilted its head, surprised. "It has bonded with him," it muttered. The others roared in shock. Dragons whispered among themselves, their voices like rolling storms. Another dragon, red and scarred, hissed, "Impossible. No dragon bonds with a human. The prophecy was only a story." But the hatchling roared, small but full of power. Its white flames sparked, lighting up the valley. The dragons fell silent, staring. The silver one lowered its head again, studying Jack closely. Perhaps it is true. Perhaps the old words were not lies. It turned to the others. The prophecy spoke of an albino born out of season, a hatchling that would choose not one of its own, but a human. And with that bond, the future of dragons would change. Jack felt his knees weaken. He had no idea what prophecy they spoke of. He only knew he had tried to save a life. Now the entire dragon species was watching him as if he carried their future. The hatchling nuzzled his side, chirping softly. Jack rested a hand on its glowing scales, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean to break your laws, I only wanted to help." The dragons whispered again. Some looked furious, others confused. Finally, the silver one roared, silencing them all. "Then let the council decide. Bring the eye. Human before us, if he is chosen, the bond cannot be broken, but if he lies, he will burn." Dragons surrounded Jack, their giant wings blocking the stars. He was pushed forward, the hatchling walking proudly at his side. Jack's heart hammered. He had survived hunters, soldiers, and fire. But this was different. This was judgment by creatures older and stronger than anything in the galaxy. As they led him deeper into the valley, Jack whispered to the hatchling, "What have you gotten me into, little one?" The dragon only chirped happily, unaware of the storm it had started. That night, under the twin moons, Jack stood before the Dragon Council, and for the first time, he realized this was not just about survival anymore. It was about destiny. His and the dragons, bound together, facing a future that would change the galaxy. The morning light broke over the hidden valley, shining on the massive dragons as they slept in clusters, their scales reflecting the sun in colors like liquid metal. Jack stood at the edge of the cliff, looking down at the hatchling, which stretched its wings and chirped excitedly. It was growing stronger every day. Its albino scales now glimmered in bright white and silver. The bond between them was clear. Jack felt it in his chest, like a warm pulse. The dragon's whispers floated in the air around him, the council discussing what to do next. The peace of the valley was short-lived. A distant rumble shook the ground, growing louder with every passing moment. Jack's eyes widened as he saw ships emerging from the clouds, Imperial warships sleek and black, their cannons glinting in the sunlight. Smoke trailed from their engines, and they moved in formation, a perfect, deadly army. Jack swallowed hard. He knew the Empire had finally discovered the secret dragon, world, and they would not leave without taking what they wanted. The dragons stirred, their eyes narrowing as they roared in unison. Flames licked the sky as they took to the air, circling above the valley like living storms. The hatchling ran to Jack, nuzzling him, chirping as if telling him not to be afraid. Jack's hands shook, but he held his ground, knowing that retreat was not an option. He had come too far, saved too much, to run now. From the sky, a warship, detached from the fleet, sending a loudspeaker message that echoed across the valley. "Dragons of Sector 9, this is the Imperial Command. You will surrender the albino hatchling immediately, or all of you will be destroyed." The voice was cold, robotic, and cruel. Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. He looked at the dragons whose wings twitched, scales gleaming like armor. They would not surrender. He could see that in their eyes. Jack turned to the hatchling, which gave a small roar, then flapped its wings with more strength than ever before. A beam of white fire shot from its mouth, arcing toward the closest warship. The fire sizzled and exploded on impact, burning a hole through the hull, sending sparks and smoke into the air. The other dragons roared in excitement, rising higher, ready to fight. Jack's heart pounded with a mix of fear and pride. He had never seen dragons fight together like this. It was like watching a living storm of fire and steel. The Empire's fleet opened fire, lasers slicing through the sky. Some missed, some hit the mountains, sending rocks tumbling down. Jack ducked behind a boulder. Pulling the hatchling close, the little dragon chirped, tiny flames flickering from its mouth as if it wanted to join the battle fully. Jack whispered, "You can do it, little one. Show them we are not afraid." The hatchling's eyes glowed, brighter, and it let out a screech that echoed like thunder. The other dragons answered, the valley shaking with their combined roar. Jack realized they needed a strategy. The dragons were strong, but the Empire had weapons, missiles, and soldiers. With energy shields, they could not just charge blindly. He pointed to the mountains. "We lure them into the cliffs, make them crash into each other. Then the hatchling and the big ones can finish them." The dragons seemed to understand. Nodding with their massive heads, Jack felt a surge of hope. Maybe this could work. As the warships swooped lower, the dragons spread out, creating a web of fire and shadow. Jack ran along the cliff's edge, shouting and signaling, directing them to positions. The hatchling flew ahead, diving between ships, dodging laser fire, its small flames igniting explosions on the hulls. The Empire soldiers opened fire, but the dragon's speed and agility kept them safe. Jack's lungs burned, but he kept moving, guiding the dragons like a conductor of chaos. One of the largest warships aimed directly for the hatchling, lasers cutting through the air. Jack jumped, rolling to the side, and shouted, "Now!" The hatchling twisted mid-air, letting out a beam of pure white fire that hit the ship's engine. The explosion sent it spinning, crashing into a cliff with a deafening roar. The other dragons followed, attacking the remaining ships with coordinated strikes. Jack watched, in awe, feeling a bond stronger than anything he had ever known. These were not just creatures of legend. They were allies, friends, protectors. After hours of battle, the Empire's fleet retreated, damaged and beaten, smoke trailing from broken ships. The dragons roared in victory, circling above the valley, their wings casting massive shadows across the land. Jack knelt on the ground, exhausted. The hatchling curled against him, breathing heavily, its scales warm against his skin. He laughed, a sound of relief and triumph, knowing they had won, at least for now. The silver dragon of the council landed, beside him, massive claws shaking the ground. "You have fought well, human," it said, voice deep and resonant. Jack looked up, still catching his breath. "I didn't fight alone. They were with me, every step of the way." The dragon nodded, slowly, a glimmer of respect in its ancient eyes. "Then you have earned our trust, and perhaps in time you will earn more." That night, as the valley quieted, the hatchling curled in Jack's lap, the other dragons watching from the cliffs. Jack realized something. He was no longer just a human mechanic. He was part of a species' history now, a protector, a friend, and a warrior. The bond with the albino hatchling had not only saved one life, but had united an entire dragon race against a common enemy. Jack's heart swelled with pride, fear, and love all at once, knowing the Empire would not give up easily. But he and the dragons were ready together. The valley was quiet, but only for a moment. Jack stood at the edge of the cliff, watching the sun set behind the mountains, the sky painted in shades of red and orange. The dragons rested in clusters, wings folded, but their eyes never closed fully, alert to any danger. The albino hatchling nuzzled against Jack's chest, chirping softly, its body glowing faintly in the twilight. It had grown stronger after the last battle, its wings larger, its fire more controlled, and Jack knew the Empire would return. Suddenly, a shadow passed over the valley, dark and massive. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he looked up. A fleet of Imperial warships had returned, far larger than before. Armed with new weapons, their engines roared, sending clouds of smoke and fire into the air. This time it was clear. They were not here to negotiate. They wanted total destruction. Jack swallowed hard, but he did not show fear. He looked down at the hatchling, its tiny claws gripping his arm. Its eyes glowing with determination, he whispered, "We can do this together." And it chirped as if it understood perfectly. The dragons stirred, their massive wings spreading wide, scales reflecting the fading sunlight like polished armor. Their roars shook the valley. Announcing that they would not back down, Jack ran to the highest cliff, signaling the dragons. The albino hatchling flew ahead, diving and twisting between the incoming ships, leaving trails of white fire in its wake. The other dragons followed, their flames lighting up the sky. The battle beginning with a roar and a flash of fire, Jack coordinated them like a general, using hand signals and shouts, guiding the dragons to attack weak points in the Imperial fleet. The largest warship aimed directly at the valley, lasers. Cutting through rocks, Jack ducked behind a boulder, shouting, "Target the engines, hit them now." The albino hatchling fired a concentrated beam of white fire, striking the main engine. The ship spun out of control, crashing into the mountainside with a thunderous explosion. The other dragons attacked in unison, their claws and fire tearing through the fleet with precision. The Empire soldiers were relentless, firing from the remaining ships, missiles streaking across the sky. But the dragons moved as one, coordinated and clever, dodging attacks, circling in patterns that trapped the ships between cliffs and fire. Jack ran along the cliff's edge, helping guide the hatchling and the others to strategic positions. The little albino dragon was fearless, diving through laser fire, leaving trails of light that ignited explosions on the enemy ships. Jack felt a mix of fear and pride, knowing the battle could still go wrong. In the midst of the chaos, Jack noticed a large ship deploying soldiers directly into the valley. They wore heavy armor and carried energy weapons, moving in formation to capture the hatchling. Jack grabbed a makeshift spear from the rocks, running down the slope with the hatchling perched on his shoulder. The soldiers opened fire, but Jack dodged with agility, his heart pounding. He leapt over rocks and crevices, the hatchling spitting tiny flames to keep the enemies at bay. Every step was dangerous, but Jack moved with determination, knowing the dragons depended on him as much as he depended on them. The dragons swooped down, their massive wings creating gusts that knocked soldiers off balance. Fireballs rained down, melting weapons and armor. The albino hatchling dove at the soldiers, screeching and firing beams of fire. Its small size made it agile and deadly. Jack's heart raced as he fought alongside the dragons, dodging attacks, throwing rocks, and using every bit of his knowledge as a mechanic to improvise weapons and traps. The bond between human and dragons felt unbreakable. Every move synced perfectly. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, the final battle began. The largest Imperial ship hovered over the valley, ready to fire a massive laser that could flatten everything. Jack realized they had only one chance. He signaled the hatchling to fly forward, while the other dragons distracted the ship. The albino hatchling's wings flared, its body glowing intensely. It launched a beam of white fire straight at the ship's core. Jack held his breath, watching the fire connect. Sparks exploded. The ship shuddered violently, then began to break apart, crashing into the cliffs, sending a cloud of smoke and debris into the valley. The remaining Imperial ships retreated, broken and defeated. The dragons roared in victory, circling above the valley, flames lighting up the darkening sky. Jack sank to the ground, exhausted, the hatchling curled in his arms, breathing heavily. Its small body shivered from fatigue, but its eyes shone with pride and trust. Jack laughed softly, relief washing over him. They had survived. They had protected the valley and each other. The silver dragon of the council landed beside him, massive wings folding as it observed Jack. "You have proven yourself, human," it said, its deep voice resonating through the valley. Jack looked up, still catching his breath. "I did it with them," he said, nodding toward the dragons. "We did it together." The silver dragon's eyes glowed with approval. "Then you are one of us now, a protector of our kind, a friend to dragons." Jack felt a warm surge of pride, knowing he had earned the trust of an entire species. That night the valley was calm, fires from the battle now fading. The dragons gathered around Jack and the hatchling, resting and watching over the valley. Jack realized something important. He was no longer just a human mechanic. He was part of something greater, a hero in a story he could never have imagined. The albino hatchling curled against him, purring softly, its white scales glowing faintly in the moonlight. Jack smiled, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, dragons and human united, loyal and unstoppable. This final battle had cemented a bond stronger than any empire, stronger than fear. Jack's heart swelled with pride, courage, and love, knowing he had saved a species, protected a world, and created a family unlike any other. The albino hatchling chirped softly, nuzzling his neck, and Jack whispered, "We're safe. For now." But he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning of many adventures with the dragons. The battle was over, but the sky still smelled like smoke and fire. Broken parts of the Empire's warships lay scattered across the valley. Some burned slowly while others crackled in the cold wind. Jack stood near a large rock, watching the dragons fly in slow circles above, keeping watch. They had won, but the cost was heavy. Some dragons were injured, a few were lost, and even the smallest hatchlings had tasted war. The albino hatchling sat beside Jack, its body pressed against his leg. It looked different now, taller, stronger, and calmer. Its white scales shimmered in the sunlight, and its wings were larger than before. Jack looked down at it, his eyes filled with pride and emotion. "You were amazing," he whispered. The hatchling chirped softly, then looked up toward the sky, as if waiting for something. From the cliffs above, the Council of Dragons gathered once more. Their eyes watched Jack silently as he walked up the path with the hatchling by his side. The silver dragon stepped forward and spoke in a deep voice. "You have done what no other human ever has. You saved one of our own, and now you've helped save us all." Jack stopped in front of them, the wind blowing through his dusty clothes. He didn't feel like a hero, just tired and overwhelmed. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "We fought together. The dragons, the hatchling, and me. We trusted each other, and we won because of that." The dragons nodded slowly, and the silver one lowered its massive head. "The bond between you and the albino hatchling is real and unbreakable. Ancient words spoke of a time when dragon and human would stand side by side. That time has come." Suddenly the albino hatchling stepped forward, raising its head high. A bright light surrounded it, not fire, but pure energy. The dragons gasped. Stepping back, Jack looked around confused. "What's happening?" he asked. The silver dragon whispered. "It is choosing its path. It is not just a hatchling anymore. It is becoming something more." The light grew stronger, glowing like a small star. The ground trembled beneath Jack's feet, and then the light faded slowly. The hatchling stood taller, stronger, its wings now stretched wide like banners. Its eyes glowed with intelligence and power. It had changed, not just in body, but in spirit. The silver dragon bowed deeply. "It is no longer a hatchling. It is the future of our kind, and you, human, are now part of that future." Jack stepped forward, placing his hand gently on the dragon's snout. "We'll protect each other," he said softly, "no matter what comes next." The dragon blinked slowly, pressing its head against his chest. In return, days passed and the valley began to heal. The dragons worked together to clean the ruins, build new shelters, and honor those who had fallen. Jack helped wherever he could, repairing broken tools, building bridges, and even teaching young dragons how to fly better using simple air resistance. Tricks he learned from repairing ships. The albino dragon, now fully grown in spirit if not size, stayed close to Jack always. They trained together every day, learning each other's strengths. They could now understand each other without words, a bond so deep it needed no sound. One morning, while Jack fixed a piece of damaged armor, a small group of humans arrived in the valley. They came in peace. Holding no weapons, they were rebels from distant colonies, People who had heard of the battle and the human who stood with dragons. They wanted to help, to be part of something greater. Jack welcomed them with open arms, and soon, humans and dragons were working together, sharing knowledge, stories, and even laughter. The old fear between their kinds began to disappear, replaced by trust and understanding. The Empire, after losing the battle, went silent. Their pride had been broken, their most powerful fleet destroyed by dragons and one human. They could not explain it, and they feared what more might come from this alliance. They did not return, not for a long time. One evening, Jack stood at the highest cliff looking down at the valley he now called home. The albino dragon stood beside him, larger, wiser, and glowing softly in the moonlight. "Do you miss the colony?" the silver dragon asked as it landed behind him. Jack smiled, shaking his head. "No, this is where I belong now." The silver dragon nodded. "You are no longer just a mechanic. You are our brother, our friend, our protector." The wind blew through the valley, carrying with it the sounds of peace. Young dragons playing, humans laughing, and the soft crackle of firelight from shared meals. Jack looked up at the stars, wondering what other adventures waited in the galaxy. He knew danger could return, that enemies might rise again. But now, he was not alone. He had dragons beside him, and one special dragon who had once been just a weak little hatchling in a pile of scrap metal. That small act of kindness had changed everything, and now an entire species called him family. The albino dragon leaned its head against his shoulder, and Jack whispered, "Let them come if they dare, we're ready now." And under the stars, in the heart of the hidden valley, a new legend was born, of a human mechanic and a dragon of light, who together shaped the future of two worlds, forever.